In this lesson, we'll set up our center of gravity control. A lot of times you find the center of gravity control right on top of the hip control, which makes it difficult to select between the two. So what I like to do is actually take the shape of the center of gravity and kind of move that out so we have some easy selection. We still want the pivot though to be right at the hip controls pivot, right at the hip bone. So to get started here, we can go to our create panel and use a text shape. Let's just make a C. So going to our text parameters, again we'll just type in a C and then create the shape and right click to come out of the tool. From here we can center to the pivot on this. We can head over to the hierarchy panel, choose effect pivot only and choose center to object. Alright, let's say we go ahead and match this to our hip control, and then we can kind of scale it down. So what we'll want to do here is press Alt A and match that right to our hip in orientation and position. So let's make sure all of these are turned on. Alright, now that that's done, of course, let's scale this down. And then we can use the hierarchy panel effect object only to make this look more like a C. Right now it's kind of flipped. So I'll go to the rotate tool, make sure angle snap is turned on. Then we can rotate this down 90 degrees, rotate it up 90 degrees, and there we have it. So we can come out of that now, kind of scale this down a little bit more, and move it out, and only in its object, okay, only in its shape. So we'll go to our move tool and move that out, and maybe move it up just a little bit more. Okay, so from here, I'd actually like to maybe scale it down a little bit more so it's not so large. And I think that's fine. Alright, let's say we go ahead and adjust the thickness on this. With it selected, we can definitely increase this some more. I'd say to about 4. Okay, great. We definitely can recolor this as well. So I'd say we make it different from our chest and hip control. Again, so we can easily discern between our controls. You can use a dull yellow for this. Okay, great. So I'll turn off wireframe mode just to see how this looks. Looks good. Alright, so the pivot's right where it needs to be. The orientation of this is correct. We can rename this from here. This is going to be CC_COG01 for center of gravity. Now we can work on linking our hip and chest control to this object. So selecting both controls, we'll go to our link tool and link. So as we start to move this center of gravity around, our spine will follow. Now you can see that the orientation of the spine is not following too well. That's because we need to set this center of gravity control up a little bit more so that it will function the way it needs to. We don't want the twisting to stay behind. So what I like to do here is actually create another object that's tied directly to the center of gravity control, link all necessary objects to it, and that way the spine of the upper body will twist the way we need it. If we link directly, we may run into some twisting in our objects. So it's going to be a lot more seamless for us to go ahead and create that extra object, link to that, and then link that back to our center of gravity control. So let's go back to our create panel and we'll create another helper. Going to be using a lot of these. Alright, so now that it's made, can go back to the modify panel, and let's say we give this a size of 9. It's a little bit larger than our hip envelope. As far as its position, again, we're going to want that right on top of our hip envelope object, or where our hip control is. So we'll just press Shift A and snap. From here, we can rename this. This is going to be PT underscore COG01. And if you like, you can also recolor this as well. Maybe go with a different shade of blue. Alright, so what are we going to want to do with this? Firstly, we want to link right to our center of gravity control. So let's take care of that. Secondly, what we want to do is go ahead and take our bones, our IK goals, and also our path constraints and link to this object so that when we start to move our center of gravity around, everything will function right. To do this, I'll first go ahead and hide our character's mesh so it's a lot easier to do so we can actually see what's happening. With the object selected, I'm actually going to go ahead and freeze its transforms first to clean it up. And now selecting each bone, just control clicking each. With our link tool still active, we'll link right to that helper. Next, we'll take care of our IK goals. With each of those selected, again, we link right to that helper. And now lastly, we grab the path helpers and link to that object as well. And now what we should get as we select our center of gravity and start to move that around is the spine following exactly the way we need it to when we move that center of gravity. Great. This is coming together very well. Just to show you this, if we were to select our thigh bones and go ahead and link to this, not the helper, but to the actual hip bone, that's what we want these bones to follow. If we were to now move our center of gravity, notice as we rotate back and forth, there's going to be no buckling in the knees. And we still get the side-to-side shifts that we need. And the twisting. Alright, so right now I'm just going to go ahead and unlink that, but I just wanted to show you how that works. Okay, great. So we have this helper in line. We have our upper body controls linked to our main center of gravity control, and with that we can select both of these controls and go ahead and now freeze their transforms to clean them up. We can go to our center of gravity control and do the same. Okay, so that completes this lesson, okay, with the center of gravity control and upper body controls established. We need to discuss a rotation order before we get into setting up our twist, which will be very soon. So in the next lesson, we're going to do a little discussion on working with our rotation order for controls.